Christina, you weren't getting that feedback from me, right? It was just him? I'm signing off again.
ready to go, Vice Chair Powell.
Okay, well, I see the screen, so we must be good. So we will call the meeting, the public meeting of the Historic Review Board for Tuesday, May 23rd. It is 7:02 p.m. and we will do a roll call. Let's see, we have Board Member Green.
Present.
Board Member Edgar.
Here.
Board Member Stobie.
Present.
And Board Member Fair, who is not here yet. And Tim Powell, Vice Chair, is here.
Thank you.
Okay, our first order of business is design advice, and I will turn that over to you, Christina.
Thank you. Just to remind the board members and anybody in the audience, design advice is a process and opportunity for applicants of future land use applications to come in front of the board for an informal meeting to discuss initial proposals, to try to get non-binding feedback. This meeting and what's turned in for this meeting will be entered into the record if they actually turn in an application. So what's nice about this is it's a chance to really see, if there are major revisions that need to happen, or if they're going on the right path as they refine their drawings before they get to a formal land use application. And so I don't have a presentation, but I know that Trevor is here on behalf of the applicant, and we'll let him speak, and I can share my screen for the board members to review what's in your packet. Only thing I have on a staff level, I don't usually do an analysis, but I did notice that the rear and side elevations do not have a lot of windows on them. It makes sense for the elevation that's closest, almost abutting the rear of the Sara Hughes House. That might be more conflicting, but I think on a staff level, I'd like to hear what the board says about appropriate windows on the rear and the side elevation. Just to remind everybody, this is not an official middle housing project, as this is an additional unit on a multifamily project, which is zoned in our mixed use corridor district. So this is additional units that would be built in the same location as an existing detached garage. So that garage would be demolished and these units would be built in its place, and it would be all part of one tax lot. So in a sense, it's a detached new construction on a designated property, which is an additional multifamily unit. So think about it that way, though I know the applicant did look at our newly adopted design guidelines for middle housing for general guidance, but this is not a technical middle housing project. It'll go through site plan and design review, and we'll come back to the Historic Review Board as new construction on a designated structure. So with that, I will turn it over to Trevor, and let me know if you want me to share the screen with the PDF from the agenda.
Hello, my name's Trevor. I'm with American Made Construction, and I'm here on behalf of my client and talking about this multifamily project off of 7th Street. And yes, could you share that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, because I have the file that I could send, so bear with me, it's my first time doing this. So do I want me to send this file, or?
Nope. I can do it right here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the first page is the email. This is the second page with the site plan, and this shows the addition, and this is the historic apartments right here in 7th Street and JQ Adams.
Yeah. Yep. So yes, we're proposing to build a 6-unit not complex, but structure, and 4 of the units would be more of a studio style, and 2 of the rear units will be a 1-bedroom style unit. And we're just looking to get your guys' ideas on what would be okay in your guys' eyes So we're all on the same page when it comes to the review for historic review board.
Would you like me to go to the next page or stay on
Yes,
this
can we
page?
go?
Okay.
Yes, please.
Oops. And I am going to, here we go. So this shows the historic Sara Hughes apartments, the new addition on JQ Adams. Here's a rendering, another rendering. These are, and then we see to the right, you have the elevation is looking like, actually, Trevor, I'll let you explain the 3 elevations. I want to make sure I get them right.
Yeah, so the one on the top left that says in the black and white pictures, the one on the top left, number 3, that is actually the rear of the structure. That's what the back of it would look like. And then the one to the right of it would be the if I would say the east side of the building. That would be what would be
Kind of right here, right?
across, yeah, it'd be right on that side, across from the existing structure. And then number 2 would be what would be on the west side property line.
So right here.
Yes, that side, exactly. And then and as you can see, the front would be on J. Quincy Avenue. And we wanted to try and, as much as possible, match the idea of the existing building without making it the exact same, because I know we have to kind of make it a little different. It can't be the same, so we can depict the difference between the two. So we're just trying to get an idea of what kind of exterior shell we're looking at. And then can we go down, please?
Sure.
And then here's our units. So unit 1 and 2 are going to be on the base floor. They will have their own entrance from the front of Quincy, JQ Avenue. And then there will be a center walkway up to units 4 and 5. And then to reach unit 3 and well, sorry, to reach unit 3 would be on the first level, also going around the back. And then unit 4, 5, and 6 will all be reached through that stairwell in the front.
Oh, so right up here and then
Yes,
again here.
Sorry, I'm pointing at my computer trying to explain it. You guys can't see my finger.
So the middle door is an interior staircase that accesses
Yes.
the
The
second.
access is the picture on the left side, yes.
Mhm.
And then that's pretty much the project in a nutshell. We're still in the designing and curating phase to make sure this is exactly what everybody wants. This is comfortable for what the client wants and what we want to build. And we would just like your guys' input on just pretty much your input. What would fly? What's not going to fly? What do we need to do? What do we need to change to satisfy the HRV?
All right, I'm going to scroll back up here. This might be, looks like the best
Perfect.
kind of page
Yeah.
to land on. So HRB members who have not been involved in design advice before, this is your chance to ask questions. There's no, since it's non-binding, there's no vote or collective decision. So each individual board member can kind of provide questions and direction. And then it's up to the applicant to, you can pose questions back to them. If you don't know the answer, HRB members, that's perfectly fine. You're not on the spot tonight. And then really at that end, the goal is to give you as much direction as they're able with the information they have. And I see Paul has raised his hand first.
Thank you. The building, when I've been to the site, I was looking at it at the right below the roof line on the historic structure. There's a lot of nice detail, let's put it that way. And I would love to see that type of detail in the continuation, so as that it's not like that you have to make it completely different. The key point is that you need to make it compatible and not detracting. And the compatibility needs to exist into the design of the windows. And I look at the windows and I look at the roof line. The roof line should emulate the roof line of the historic building, in my opinion. That way, the way it's depicted in the upper left, upper right side in black, that the roof line that you're showing there, to me, is too abrupt, and it's not compatible with the roof line of the existing building. So I'm concerned with the way the windows are clustered, 3 windows across on the upper floor. The whole window side seems to detract. It's like it's too much there, and in glass, and the glass is not designed to be compatible with the windows, the symmetry of the existing windows in size and proportion and image. But that's it's, I think you're trying, it just needs to get to, so it doesn't look like a wart onto the side of a historic building. And right now it's something, it needs more compatibility. I'm through.
Any other questions? Or let's just move on and say, Chair, Board Member Green.
Yeah, I think my major concern is the roof line. And I guess the designer maybe can comment. I'm puzzling over the steeper roof pitch in back and the cross gable. I guess I'm just kind of speculating that might be accommodating a vault in the rear upper unit, the unit number 6. But I guess I would be, along with Board Member Edgar's comment, I would be more comfortable without seeing that cross gable, that west elevation, which is blank. And I'm guessing in regards to Christina's comment about no windows there, that's undoubtedly probably a firewall because it's on the property line. So probably windows are not allowed on that elevation. And I guess if I'm incorrect on that, somebody can correct me on that. But I guess I would be more comfortable with just a straight full hip design without changing roof pitch in the back. And that would lower the profile and make it more compatible with the existing building. As far as the ornamentation, in regards to Board Member Edgar's comments, picking up some of that cornice detail would be good, but I do see merit in simplifying it, which would, you might say, designate that as not part of the historic structure, the notion of trying to make it somewhat different. So that would be my 2 main thoughts. I guess the roof line, if it would work to just use a standard full hip all the way around the building, match the roof pitch of the existing. Regarding the windows, I'm guessing that west exposure, there cannot be windows on it. The rear elevation, I'm not too sure is terribly visible from the public. I have visited the site, but I'd have to look at that more closely from that opposite side. There's neighboring property there. I guess an additional window in the living room of the 2 rear units could add a little more detail to the rear elevation. I don't see that as hugely significant. The other thing, the overhang is clipped on the west elevation. I'm sure they're again for the fire code situation, with the exception of the porch overhang. And if that is indeed the case, then the porch overhang will need to be narrower so it does not protrude past on the west side. So I would suggest in that case that the porch roof just be narrowed, which would mean pulling, if it's a 1 foot overhang, that would mean pulling the porch posts in a foot. And I don't see that as being a problem. That's not a real unusual scenario to have, you might say, a porch roof, just have the overhang match the width of the building. The concrete porch could be extended a foot just to make the porch posts land symmetrically on the corners of the porch, but that would be the only other thing. I guess windows, in regards to Board Member Edgar's comments, the triple windows up top, I might be a little bit more comfortable with just two double windows molded together there, that might more or less pick up the existing look a little bit better, mold in one unit so that it looks like two double hungs molded together. But I think that's basically my thoughts.
Thank you. Hey, Christina, can you address the west facing wall and whether that is a firewall or whether it can be windows placed?
Sure. Well, I'm not speaking for the building department, but you know, the design guidelines would want them to have windows, so the board can require windows, and that would require the applicant to set back the design. So the board has the ability to require windows on that elevation for compatibility, regardless of, you know, the building code saying you can't have it. If the end result is that they have to move their building in to get them their windows, the design guidelines for new construction or additions for this is kind of a hybrid, you know, a standalone new construction on a designated structure. The board can require that to be set back to allow windows.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Stobie.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Tyree if he knew if there was a reason for not having windows on that west side elevation. If there was a building code or what research he had done regarding that. Well, if Trevor can answer that real quick, or
Trevor, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, so based it off when our designer created this, that was a firewall, so we did not put windows on that west elevation. That was my understanding when the designer created this mock-up.
Thanks, Trevor. Well, without sounding like we're beating a dead horse here, my only concern, or nothing really in addition, but the windows. I like the idea of the double on the top and the bottom. I agree with Mr. Edgar that the windows are out of proportion. I don't know if there's anything can be done with the bottom, but it really does stand out, and I think it does detract a little bit from the historic structure. So I would like to see a reduction on both if that's possible. But I also want to say, give a kudos to Mr. Trevor Tyree for coming before the HRB. He and I do know each other from Chamber of Commerce, and I've been very excited about this project for Trevor. So kudos to you, Trevor.
Great. Okay, well, I agree with basically what I've heard and would put votes in for the equal pitch on the roof line. The windows, if possible, on the southwest side. The doors that I see on this drawing I'd want more traditional door as opposed to a full glass plate there, whether it be some more of a traditional look. I like the windows in the door. That'd be great to give some light rather than the standard wood door. But the all glass door I think is a little too modern. While it looks great with those windows, I think those windows are a little too modern as well. So I agree with I agree with the discussion on the windows and breaking those apart, making them look like double hung pairs. And the last thing that I had was, there's not a lot you could do with the wall elements or recesses or something to break up that long line. To me, it really isn't on the other side, other than the fact that it looks like it's coming out because if you got the overheads over the doors. And I think you'll have that overhead going across, it looks like all three of those doors. So that may be enough. I just don't want it to look like a long flat wall. And I think just from the drawing, that's kind of what it looks like. Other than that, I think we've addressed all the issues that everybody else has, and I think that's probably that.
I would like to say something if possible. I know I wasn't here when we started. It's Board Member Ferry. I would just like to say that I agree with the set of two double hung windows on the top. I'd love it if the doors could be more traditional, just like Vice Chair Powell said. I'd also love it if the windows that are besides the doors could just be a little bit more in proportion with what's happening on the other building. And I do agree that the roof line is slightly distracting. And then I think if possible, having some windows on the right, what's labeled as the right side of the building, but which is the side facing the property line, would be really helpful to just fit it in with the more sort of traditional style house in the neighborhood. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Glad you're here.
Thanks. Sorry for being late.
Okay.
One more quick, if I could.
Sure. Board Member Green.
The available space, as I look at it, to try to move the building away from the property line and, do a 5-foot setback or something is pretty much going to wipe out what they're trying to do. I mean, you can look at the floor plan and see that you've got basically, by wipe out, I mean, I think you would definitely lose at least 2 units. And I guess in my view, if I'm correct, that windows would not be allowed on that with a 0 lot line, which I believe is the case, that would be too much of a requirement to impose just to gain the windows. I mean, I think we all agree that windows will look nicer there, but if you lose 2 units just to accommodate windows, I think that's maybe asking too much. And then just I agree that more traditional looking doors, and I think on that lower on the front porch there, if the windows next to the door were pulled away from the door just a little bit more, so they appear as distinctly a separate window from the door, not like a side light attached to the door, something might help. Kind of a small point, but that would be my only other comment.
Well, now that you say that, if in fact windows can't be on there for, and you don't want to lose those possibly 2 units if you can't downsize it, what about doing some sort of a recess or something on that west side facing wall just to give it a little texture instead of windows if we can't do windows? Just another, rather than look like a long flat piece.
Yeah, it will help to lose the gable end on that. I think if the design is changed to a full hip, that's going to help. So you don't have that excess portion of siding showing there. They did make a change in the siding at the floor line there, but yeah, it'd be interesting, some suggestions of board members of somehow breaking that up. It'd basically be a siding treatment, I guess, because there's really no space to give up.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Paul?
The door thing is important, and the windows, double hung, 2 windows attached would really help. The roof line, getting it compatible. But if there's a way in a firewall to have some windows through there, or even appearances of a window, even if it's not, it makes it an architectural feature that will break up that wall to in a facade type window, something to give it some texture, but to maintain the along the roof line below the roof, how the existing house has it. It's important that you come back and mirror some of this in such a way that it is not compatibility. It creates this compatibility where there is something to the existing building that you can emulate and make it much more compatible. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, Trevor, I guess, Trevor, do you have any questions of board?
Yes, from the conversation, I have 2 main points that I want to address, our questions. As far as the, I'm going to call it a patio cover on the John Quincy Adams Street. You guys were mentioning, board member Robert Green was mentioning if we go to page 1.
I can reshare my screen if that's easier.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Oh, shoot. I lost once. Oh, there we go. There we go. Is this the page you were looking for?
Yeah. So yes, exactly. Thank you. The picture on the bottom left, where it shows the patio cover, just to clarify, the eave that hangs over on that patio cover on the west side, as you're looking at it, the right side, is that what you're saying you want to cut back and make that flush with the building?
I'm guessing that would be a requirement if you're on the property line, because that would be the only element protruding over the property line. If you're doing zero lot line on that right-hand side.
Yes, and then so would you, as the board, just as an option, be opposed to a lean-to style, so it's all nice and flush? Or do you want to see that gable out style?
I personally prefer that hip style the way you show it. It would just mean that the supporting beam and the posts would move in a foot, so that the overhang moved in a foot, if those are 12-inch overhangs. Basically gets the gutter line right back against the building the same way it is on the upper level. And that's not an unusual look on, on older buildings where the porch is slightly narrower and the overhang does not protrude.
Okay, thank you. Next question is about the west wall, the flat wall, as far as something we can do. And let's go to page, best page would be
right there.
Essentially the picture we were kind of on side by side. So yeah, you can see the color picture on the left and the black and white on the right. So as far as putting some kind of accent, what kind of ideas are you thinking? Because pretty much we're trying to match the current siding on the current historic building. can we change that siding, or would that differ too much and draw away from the historic building?
Well, I see it more as opposed to changing the siding. I see it more as like maybe some recesses, or, you know, even minor recesses or build outs that would give it a little bit of texture, and something along those lines, as opposed to just having a flat wall. I'm not a builder, so, you know, I can't tell you for sure, but I think that was kind of my thought when I looked at it.
Yeah. Vice Chair Powell, can I speak for a moment just to provide
You
guidance?
may, please do.
So the design guidelines for new construction will want windows on that side elevation. And so on a staff level, I would be, you know, my job is to review the criteria and provide analysis. So I would be recommending on a staff level that there are windows. If the board through the future hearing is balancing housing needs at the site and this and that, it's really incumbent of the board and the applicant to show how they're mitigating that impact. So there may be different ways to mitigate that, but that's the thought process the applicant and the board should be thinking about.
Thank you, Christina. Well, I think just from listening to all of us, I think that we all would like to see windows on that wall. So we don't disagree with that.
Awesome, thank you, I appreciate it. That covered what the questions I had in response to your guys' review. Thank you.
Trevor. Well, thank you for thanks for coming. We appreciate it. And back to you, Christine.
All right. We have 2 public hearings this evening, and we have our normal land use opening statement. We can read it once for both applications, and then at the second application, the board can provide conflict of interest and site visit and ex parte comments, but don't have to reread it. So if you want to cite both HR files in your opening statement, this can cover both of them.
And the GLUA files?
Yeah.
As well. Okay.
Just the HR files is fine in this notice.
HR file?
Because you're referring to the whole thing.
Okay. Let's see. HR 23-00006 and HR 23-00002. Public hearings on land use applications are scheduled. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Historic Review Board are to be unbiased. Before the start of the meeting, I will ask the Historic Review Boarders whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants, or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the Historic Review Boarders have discussed the application in question with any of the parties, or have independent knowledge or relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any Historic Review Board member about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Historic Review Board will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the Historic Review Board website. Public testimony will be called on in the order it was requested in advance of the meeting. If you have not emailed city staff at planning.orcity.org to request to speak and would like to testify, please raise your virtual or physical hand when we ask if there are any others in the audience who would like to participate. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address or email address. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence or testimony to keep the record open to respond to any new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or Land Use Board of Appeals, or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And I believe that's that. A long time since I've had to read that one. All right. Let's get back to this. And this is a public hearing, GLUA 23-00015, HR 23-00006, historic review for an addition of more than 30% to a non-designated historic building in the McLoughlin Conservation District at 615 High Street. At this point, I need to ask now if anyone has conflict of interest or anything they'd like to note about this application now. And we'll start with board member Green.
No ex parte contact and no conflict of interest.
Thank you. Board member Edgar.
No conflict of interest, drove by the place many times and have no problems.
Okay. Board member Stobie.
I do have a conflict of interest in this case, and I will be recusing myself from it.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last.
And I'll be recusing myself from this.
Okay. So board member Stobie has been is recusing himself from this. And board chair Sabrina Ferry.
I have no conflict of interest. I have no ex parte contact, and I have visited the site.
Thank you. Okay, well, I have rather lengthy not conflict of interest, but we have been involved through the neighborhood association. I, as a member of as a vice chair of the neighborhood association, was contacted by the applicant back in February. This was prior to it becoming a historic review board application because they believed that it had less than 30% of an addition. So on March 2nd, at the neighborhood general meeting, there was a discussion about the application and the fact that we needed to contact applicant Ben James. Myself and our chair, land use chair, set up a meeting with Ben James and Brett, his architect. And let's see, we met for over probably 2 hours. We took a tour of the facility. We saw that we got copies of the application, copies of the drawings, and we all reviewed those. We looked at them, had a discussion with them, and then moved on. Did 4/13, we had a steering committee meeting for the neighborhood where this item was discussed. Again, at that point, it was not an HRB review. So we there were items discussed. It was basically back and forth comments about the application, and the fact that they believed, the neighborhood believed, that it was more than 30% and felt that that needed to be taken back to planning, which I believe did happen, obviously. And on 5/4, the neighborhood, the general meeting of our neighborhood association, there was discussion with the membership, reviewed the project, and at that point, after that, is when we got the notification it was going to be an HRB review. So I have pretty detailed information about this project. I've made no decision on it. I've just listened to all sides of that story. So I don't feel like I need to recuse myself at this point, but I do have quite a bit of information on that. So is there any board member or anyone out there in the audience that would like to question any of our comments at this point?
Vice Chair Powell, I have two questions for you for the record.
Yes.
One, is there anything that you saw in your application review at the neighborhood letter that you haven't seen so far in this packet? Whereas are you using information that the board does not have? Like, is there any information that you have not seen in the packet that you would have been involved in that conversation?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and the second part is, I think, and I think you said it, but with that, do you feel that you can make a non-biased decision this evening?
Okay. On the first question, yes, there is some information in the packet that I had not seen, and that was a rendering that the developer, or not the developer, but the architect had drawn up at the request of the neighborhood association. And that is in this packet. There's really nothing in this packet other than that I see. And yes, I believe I can make a decision on this. I was never really committed to it either way. I was just there as a member of the neighborhood association, so we had more than one person looking at it. So there you go. Any other questions? Okay, then I guess we can move forward.
All right.
And
Go
ahead, pass that to you.
All right, I will share my screen. Just one moment. Oops. Ooh, hold on one second. All right, can you see the screen? Are you able to? Okay.
Yes.
It's my double screen. I'm never very good on Zoom with double screens. Okay. Slideshow. Okay. So the reason the Historic Review Board is reviewing this application this evening is this is a non-designated 1960s bank building that's in our McLoughlin Conservation District, and the applicant has proposed an addition to it. There was some back and forth about the calculations of if the building was more than 30%, and based on further conversation with staff and the architect, it was deemed that it was over 30, it was 36%. Because the existing parking deck, because it's not covered, was not really considered part of the existing development square footage. And that was kind of the back and forth conversation. So with a revised calculation, it hit that threshold and was noticed. It is concurrently going through site plan and design review and a geohazard review, and that has actually just been noticed as well. So any conditions from the Historic Review Board application will be folded in to the conditions for the site plan and design review. Let's see, next slide. I have two items to enter into the record this evening. Excuse me. One is a support email from Justin Jackson that was forwarded on to you today by email. Mr. Jackson has had general support and provided a lot of the same support language that you see in the packet today of public comment for this. The second is an additional rendering that was from the McLoughlin Promenade that was based on conversations with the neighborhood association, and I've added that into my presentation this evening, and that was forwarded to the Historic Review Board. So this being a non-designated, non-historic structure, this is a great example of our design guidelines for new construction just not being a good fit to follow closely. This is not a brand new building on a vacant lot where you figure out your district and what architectural style you'll choose and how you'll design your new construction. As an addition, the applicant will want to make an addition that is not faking history or not creating a non-congruent architectural style. Like you wouldn't put a Queen Anne addition onto this commercial building or even a streetcar commercial architectural style. So in this situation, the safe harbor approach of meeting the design guidelines is not really appropriate for this proposal. And so in that situation, I always want to rely on the safe harbor paragraph that's in the first couple pages of the design guidelines for new construction. And those describe a safe harbor to allow new construction projects to be approved easily and quickly. Yet there may be occasions when alternate designs are either desired or needed. And I really think this is a perfect example of an alternate design needed. And for those situations when an exception to the guidelines is necessary, the HRB and staff shall evaluate the proposal based on the significance of the impact and measuring how well the alternative fits with the intent of the guidelines and essentially, in the end, how it affects the significance of the district. And we're really looking at the district as a whole, as well as the really two abutting designated structures, which is the McLoughlin Promenade and the elevator. So overall, staff recommends approval of this design addition and finds the placement, size, height, and the simple design of a modern addition to a non-designated structure does not adversely affect the McLoughlin Conservation District and continues to complement the designated 1950s elevator. The cantilever design and step back additions do not adversely affect, as I explained, the elevator in the McLoughlin Promenade. And more importantly, it is in line with the two flanking non-designated mid-century buildings, 605 and 617 High Street. So the way the applicant has proposed this addition, it follows the lines of the two flanking buildings. So while there is now new height and new windows, it still stays this kind of mid-century commercial node next to our mid-century elevator. So on my end, I don't have any specific conditions of approval to revise the design to make it any more compatible to the district. The board is welcome to have that conversation. I did not see any particular design element that, if revised, would make it go from not compatible to compatible. But I did want to put a condition of approval that kind of puts sidebars around when it would ever have to come back to the board. Oftentimes, as these, especially these all kind of larger modern windowed projects get through site plan design review as well as the building code, there may be a window that may have to change from pure transparency to citing for building code reason, this or that. So I didn't want to have this application come back to the board because they had to replace one window with citing or they had to make a small change. So this condition provides kind of sideboards of when it would have to go back to the board. The board can add any subcomponents to this if they want through the discussion at the end of this project, through the proposal. So I have a couple slides that show orientation and renderings. The subject site is, once again, a 1965 building. It replaced the Sara Hughes House, which was a pretty grand 19th century building that over time had been disinvested. And like a lot of the stories of the 1950s, that whole block was demolished and rebuilt, though the Chase Carriage House still exists across the street and is still designated. Below is a picture from, it's a Google Street View picture from High Street. You'll see the existing parking deck. The next slide will show some what the renderings look like. So actually this one more, this shows the existing condition. If you're down on 7th Street looking up, you'll see a little bit of the existing condition shows the kind of podium entry foyer that you would walk into today from the deck parking. And a little bit, those windows to the left of the arrows, the staircase down to the office space, which is on the ground floor, which is at the pedestrian level of the McLoughlin Promenade and the elevator. This is some renderings from the applicant's proposal. The upper part shows the larger kind of entry vestibule space and office space. And then the below photo shows really what you're looking at from McLoughlin Promenade. So you see that the cantilevered addition on the kind of the parking deck story, and then the addition 1 story above it. And then what is below is the existing office space. Here is a rendering above showing that addition on the High Street level. You'll notice that the addition really is in line with the 2 other mid-century buildings next to each other. And below is that current view again. This is a rendering from 7th Street looking up, as well as from the McLoughlin Promenade view, kind of pedestrian level at the top of the elevator looking at. The existing, if you're there today, there's a small kind of outdoor patio space that is proposed to be retained and reconfigured. But what you see when I'll show the site plan is the addition is brought out really to the property line of the site and abuts the and follows the line of the non-designated kind of mid-century building to the north and cantilevers over the half of the patio space. So this is the new rendering that was sent by email to you today. So this is the 617 High Street, the back end of it as you're walking towards the elevator, and you'll see that the addition is in line with that as you're walking towards the elevator. And this is another rendering. You'll see at the top left that cantilever element from the side profile, and there's some internal perspectives as well. And the site plan, you'll see, I'm going to show here. So you'll see right here, this is showing that this is the line of the abutting mid-century building that continues out this way for that addition. And then this is the revised planting and hardscape plan for the patio. So this is standard conditions of approval from the board. You can approve the proposal with staff's recommendation and conditions. You can approve the proposal with modified conditions and provide revised findings. You can deny the proposal and provide revised findings, or you can continue the hearing and request more information, kind of standard options for the board. I'm going to end my show. Oh, actually, I'll wait. Does the board, I'll go back to here. Does the board have any questions for staff before I hand it off to the applicant?
I have one question, Christina, and that is, it appears that that north elevation is on the property line, so the roof overhang would extend past the property line over the promenade. Is that, does that require like a variance from planning, or is that an approved condition for the planning department?
You know, that's going through site plan and design review now. The site plan design review will look at the site setbacks and allowances for cantilevered and projections off the property line. If there are any requirements that require it to be pulled back, the applicant will have to address that. The board doesn't need to address that today, but could provide any additional conditions that would allow kind of a reduced size of the addition if that happened to be the case.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, no other questions. Okay, Christina.
Okay, I'm going to end my slideshow. Stop share. So I'll hand it over to the applicant.
Hey, good evening, Ben James. I live in Willamette, but I work in Oregon City. I'll probably talk just for a little bit and then turn it over to Brett, if that's okay. And then I'm happy to circle back after Brett talks if I can field any questions. So I'll say this is, well, first of all, thank you for your time today and all the effort that's gone into this, to Christina and Jude and everybody at the city and McLoughlin Neighborhood Association. This is the second building we've done in Oregon City. It's been a great home for us. The first one's at 1209 in Jackson. It's fully occupied right now. It's a great building. We bought 615, my wife and I, 8 or 9 years ago. I think I was biking to work and I saw the yellow and red and mustard and ketchup building and knew it was a gem. I couldn't understand why it was vacant for so many years. I moved in there, fixed the roof, but it is, continuing to give us problems. So we have to have some sort of abatement or solution for the water coming in. But it's a great building. It's obviously it's such a cool spot in Oregon City, being by the elevator. My original intent with the building was to have something other than office space in that lower section. It tends to lend itself to maybe a community asset, which, having a finance office down there doesn't do us a lot of good. So my hope is by having the addition above, we'll be able to move our practice up there and then we'll open up the basement for something that is a little bit more fun for the community. So that's certainly what we're striving for. Other than that, again, we're a good partner for the city. We work hard, we maintain our property, and hopefully that you guys will see value in what we're trying to do. So I'll stay on here as well, but Brett, I'll turn everything over to you at this point. So thanks again. And Brett, you might not be.
There we go.
There we go.
Good evening, board. How are you all tonight? I hope all is well. Been listening. I guess what I'd like to start out with is any questions. I think Christina has done a great job in explaining kind of our thought process. I might say up front that when Ben and I first started talking about this, the first thing that came up is we needed to figure out a way to take care of the problems that we were having with the deck leaking. He's spent quite a sum of money to get it so-called waterproofed, and it still leaks. And if you walk through his vacant spaces right now, there's tarps up to help drain the water to buckets and all that. It is not a pretty sight. So that's where, when Ben and I started talking about this, we looked at, doing a simple, basically a steel framed roof over the top of the deck. And then we started talking about doing some additional small square footages that he could move into and then possibly open up the basement to, maybe something that could be more of a community asset, especially at the top of the elevator. Is right now the courtyard is, if you've been up there during the winter, you've seen that Ben put some of the old, I think it's Meyer and Frank animated displays that he's been able to pick up over the years and display those when you walk down the path during the Christmas holidays. It's quite nice. But I guess at this point, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we're trying to do. I have collected over the last month and a half, probably 200 photographs of the existing the Chase House, the elevator when it was built, the demolition of the Chase House, and subsequent bank with a big, huge sign. that was up there and now what it looks like now, and then what we're proposing to do. So I guess what I'd ask is at this point, if there's any questions that I can answer related to the design, I'd leave it up to that at this point.
Okay, any board members have questions? None. All right
Oh.
then.
Board Member Green raised his hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just a couple. First off, I concur with the owner that it seems to be a really good endeavor for adding value to the neighborhood. And I do feel like the obviously being outside the safe harbor design guidelines, it would need to be, I see it as being very compatible with what's there and with the, you might say, the mid-century styling and surrounding it. So I think it's a great asset. I guess my only questions just are a couple particulars. The most noticeable architectural feature from below and probably from the promenade as well will be the glazing. So I don't know if it's determined yet, but is the intent to be reflective glazing or tinted glazing? So that would be one question. Another question that I had is in regards to the cover over the parking deck, which will be probably the next most noticeable thing from the promenade. Looking up at it, you'll be looking at the underneath side of the of that structure, that roof deck over the structure. So my question on that is, will that essentially be an all steel framework that will be visible, not screened with anything, but you'll be basically just looking at a steel, exposed steel? And then if so, it appears in your color rendering, it would be a dark color, maybe a dark gray or chocolate or something like that, which I think would be appropriate. But so basically 3 questions on the architectural styling. One would be the glazing. One would be what you're viewing of the underneath side of that roof deck from the promenade. And then lastly, there was a comment on, you might say, the solid walls being stucco to more or less match the cast concrete on the lower level, but it said stucco panel. So I guess I'm wondering, would that be a stucco party panel that is intended to use there? It looks like on the color renderings, you're seeing kind of a panelized wall system there, and on the black and white renderings, we see kind of a vertical style abstract, I guess, on those hard walls. So that was the question of that. If it's going to be hardy panel, then will the panels be trimmed with like the extruded aluminum trim around all the panels and the corners and so forth? And then if so, would that trim be color coordinated to the stucco panel, the color for the stucco panel? Or would that be like a contrasting, like an anodized trim or a mill finish trim? So basically 3 questions on those 3 architectural elements: the glazing, the underneath side of the parking deck, and then those solid sides, the stucco treatment on that.
Well, to answer your first question on the glazing, because of energy codes, we do have to have a little bit of tint to it, but our expectation is to be not reflective. It'll be transparent, and that's a decision, obviously, because we don't want to blind the people late in the day on a Friday afternoon in July across the river over there and blind the people coming down the archway bridge. So the intent is to do a clear or a slight tint to the glazing to meet the energy codes. They'll also be, the glass is all, it's thermally insulated, and it'll be argon filled panels. So it's not necessarily, as Ben is discovered when we're doing our first cost estimates, that the glass is the most expensive part of the building when we're looking at it. So that gives you kind of an idea. We've early on, I flew a drone. I hired a company to come out and fly a drone up off of that so we could get an idea of what the view would be above. And looking at it, it just made sense that we needed to try to keep it as clear as we can, because two reasons. One, it'd be spectacular to look up there, and if Ben's got, you know, people at night in his office or something, to be able to see a dynamic use up there, which we don't see now except for people walking on the promenade. So I think that's a big part of that. Your second question, and I can't remember if this right off the top of my head, but yes, the steel panels on the roof would be all exposed. And the intent would be that they were painted, you know, in a cohesive color with what we select for both the standing seam metal roof and the underside of the deck, and the steel columns would all be a similar color. The stucco panels, you know your stuff, because that's exactly what we're looking at, is the walls on both sides of the property lines need to be a rated assembly. So we're looking at a hardy panel stucco with a similarly painted extruded aluminum joint between them. So it'll be a 4x12 panel, and we'll be able to articulate that like it was a precast or a cast in place panel. That's the intent there. So I'm not a big fan of the Z metals. That's very affordable to do that, but that doesn't always look great, you know, when you use a Z channel. But we would use probably a 1/2 inch so that it would end up looking like a precast a panel joint. So the other colors on the building are just a thought process right now. The orange under the deck along that walkway was originally a thought to go back to some of the mid-century modern furniture that Ben uses in his office. I happen to have an associate architect that really likes that stuff. So he does the renderings for me. So he said, I'm going to put this in because I like the color, and I like it. And it's just enough of a hint to give you kind of what was, you know, if you look up some of the history, you'll see some of the other colors on the building. So to answer a question I think someone posed earlier about the roof overhang, the existing building to the north, and I don't know the name of that building, the panels come out about 5 feet cantilever over the walkway. The current building code allows, I think it's 4 feet, 12 feet up. So that gives you an idea that you can come out per the building code over a public right of way up to 4 feet. And then I think you can go out a little more each time. But I think we did that just to help get a little bit of sunshade between noon and about 3 on the top or upper glazing. So I think we were figuring about 2 or 2.5 feet at this point. I think that's what the model shows currently. So is there any other questions? Happy to answer.
I think that answers mine, and thank you for addressing that roof overhang, because I'd hate to see it go away.
Okay, any other questions of the board? Okay, apparently not.
Well, I think James wanted to have, Ben might have wanted to have just the last word so I'll turn it over to Ben.
I never get the last word, Brett, but it's very nice of you. If it's the last word, then just thank you everybody for the consideration. It's an exciting project, and we hope to move forward with it. So thanks again.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, Christine.
Okay, I'm going to open up share my slide, and I wanted to make one comment about the overhang and maybe add a potential side condition. So 1 second, let me share my screen. And then I'm going to go up here. So can you see where it says recommended conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay. So because the historic review board is looking at general alignment, and the site plan design review is looking at kind of site dimensions and setbacks, and the conversation with the overhang, I wanted to bring up something that may impact this project, and I want to make sure there's a condition of approval. The walkway to the elevator is actually not right away. It's part of the promenade, which is a tax lot. So there may be a situation where this overhang cannot go over the tax lot, because you can't build over a tax lot, but you can overhang in a right of way. That is a area we'd have to look into it more about, if it's actually a tax lot, if there's right of way pieces to it, how that works with building code. But I wanted to tag that where if this conversation, the applicant would need to revise to shorten that overhang in order to meet building code, I wanted to have a condition of approval that the board give direction of when they would want to come back and see it. So we could add a condition number D, and so that's something I want to add for the board to have that conversation of what they'd want to see if the applicant had to revise the overhang based on building code and setbacks because of the promenades not being a right of way.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
So I guess it could be is if the any reduction, a full reduction, any reduction is fine. If there's no overhang and it just, this is more like this, I think, a conversation with the board of how you want to address providing direction. And I'll look for the board about when they would want to see it back, or when would they allow the applicant to work with building code to reduce that overhang if needed.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, if it is a problem as a result of being an adjoining tax lot where there cannot be, I don't think that that's a decision that it comes back, they just have to do. I think that we're all in agreement, at least my assumption is, that this is a good thing for Oregon City. I think that the builder, the owner, they're doing the right thing all the way around. I think it's going to be an asset, a very improved asset. And I would come back and say that if that is an adjoining tax lot, then if they waive, who has control of that tax lot, and if they could wait, it's never going to be developed, and therefore I just don't think it should be that there should be an effort made to make sure that that the need for AD definition of what to do should not take place. I just don't think that we need to worry about it. I think it should be handled externally and just put to bed. Let's make it look as beautiful as it can be done. I think that's what they want to do, and they want to make it a good asset. And I think that's absolutely positive for Oregon City. Thank you.
Okay, I think that if the building down the way has already, and I'm going off of what they said, but if the building, next door has already got a structure at a higher level going over the walkway, well, that's something to consider as well. But I don't believe that even if it was told that they had to go back flush. I don't see that that would really affect the overall design of the building. I think the angles look good. They match up to the new parking lot cover. I think, sure, it's going to look a little flat up there. But I guess if I was to want to review it, I would just say review it if they have to take it completely off. But I don't know that that was going to change much, honestly, to the structure of the building or to the design of the building.
I concur with that, and if it turns out that it simply cannot project, then just detailing it in the best possible way seems appropriate. It's a little similar to the last one we discussed. You're going to give up too much to try to just get an overhang if you move the building back or something like that. And that just doesn't seem appropriate at all to me. So hopefully a path can be found where the overhang can be preserved. But if not, I'm still very favorable of the project. I'm curious if Sabrina's still with us. I'd love to hear any thoughts that she might have too.
I really like the projection. I think it's well balanced with the sort of stepped down lower projection of the car parking cover. It would be a shame to lose it. I don't know exactly how we could mitigate it if it can't exist. I don't know if it negates, the entire design. To pull back that overhang, but I do hope it can go forward. I don't know. Do you all think that we need to see it again, or do you think that it sounds like everybody's okay with it being flush, but that we all enjoy the projection of the overhang on top of this the 3-story structure? So.
So it sounds to me like we really don't need to see it again.
I don't, yeah.
Does that answer your question, Christina?
Yeah, with that direction, I wouldn't add a D. The D would be only a specified, so it doesn't fall there. But just because a 1960s building has overhang on a city tax lot doesn't mean you get it this round. So I just want to tag it as this is probably some further work that the applicant may need to do as part of site plan design review. My goal with this is just getting clear direction when there's an inevitable design tweak at the building permit stage, so I know when something has to come back to the board. So.
Okay, well, it sounds like we all like the design, but I don't think it necessarily has to come back to us.
I agree.
Okay, very good.
So would we do a motion then?
Unless somebody would like to comment on the design or any other comments you might have before we do that.
And I have no public comments this evening online.
Online, thank you. And you all read we had public comments in the packet, so we all saw those. Before we take a vote, I would like to say that I have looked at this many times over and from many different locations, and I was really a little bit concerned with massing, on the right off the walkway. But the way the design shows, basically it's going to be open on the first floor all the way through there, so you really don't get any sense of that at all as a pedestrian. Even walking out of the elevator, you don't get any perception of this large building right there. So I think they've done an excellent job, in not having that massing affect anything on a historic walkway. I think overall it would be a really good project, and I think it would be beneficial to Oregon City. The only, like I said, like we all said, I believe, is we don't want a real shiny glass up there if we don't it's something a little bit dulled down, so we're not blinding people coming across the bridge.
That's
But other than that, because I've come across that bridge at times with blinding light, but anyway, that's my thought. And I am open to a
Dave, make a motion.
So I will move that for approval with the staff recommended conditions of approval of GLUA 2315 and HR 2306 with the added stipulation if the north facing overhang needs to be removed, that it does not need to come back to the Historic Review Board for approval.
I
Okay.
second that.
okay.
All right.
Do you want to call?
Sure. Board Member Powell,
Aye.
Board Member Green,
Aye.
Board Member Edgar,
Aye.
Chair Ferry, I guess
Aye.
Vice Chair. Board Member Ferry tonight.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you all.
right. Thank you very much.
All right. And just so the Historic Review Board knows, site plan design review in Oregon City does have a cap that does not allow fully reflective windows. There's a percentage of transparency you can't go higher than. So it kind of allows darker transparency to address glare, but not fully reflective. And so the applicant will need to meet that site plan design review standard. And we in Oregon City don't allow fully reflective windows.
Great. Thanks for straightening that out.
Okay. I think we're ready for the next.
All right, moving on to
application.
GLUA 23-00001 and HR 23-00002. 151 Molalla, new construction of a triplex on land. It is part of a designated landmark, the Rasmussen-Buol House.
All right, so I think we just need to do additional conflict of interest and site visits since the last meeting.
Okay, we'll do that. Let's see, we have Board Member Green.
No ex parte contact and no conflict of interest.
Thank you. Board Member Edgar.
No ex parte contact. And I visited the site and I'm ready to listen.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Stobie.
I have visited the site, no conflicts of interest and no ex parte contact.
Thank you. And Board Member Ferry.
No ex parte contact, no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. And same for myself. Nothing has changed from the last time. So it is no conflict of interest and that's it. All right.
All right, let me
Christine.
share my screen. And 1 second. Oop. All right, I have a short little presentation. This is once again proposed new construction on a designated landmark, the Rasmussen-Buol House, 151 Molalla Avenue. So since the board met at the March meeting, the applicant has not pursued revisions to the submitted plan nor has any substantive conversation with staff. So therefore staff is unable to recommend revisions to the plan that would result in a compatible design that could be implemented through clear and objective conditions of approval. Staff recommends that the board adopt the findings in the staff report and specifically cite the following findings I'm going to show on the second page in their motion if there's a motion to deny the application. So these are the same bullets as what was presented in March. The major findings for denial: that the proposed triplex is larger compared to the massing of the abutting historic landmark, much larger. The building is placed such that it does not provide adequate spacing around the historic Rasmussen-Buol House. And I think this is really the most specific because we have looked at, we might look at other projects that might put a building close to a landmark. But this one is really, I think, one of the key, which is it does not preserve the predominant pedestrian view of the once corner house looking south uphill from Molalla. Though the applicant has attempted to set the new construction back 19 feet to approximately meet the setback of the landmark building and has designed a building that does not obtrusively restrict the pedestrian view, it does remove the Rasmussen-Buol House as a prominent landmark on the corner, right? So that's the big thing, is this new construction, where it's placed, removes the landmark's status as a larger corner lot building. If the applicant has proposed a new construction that was set back further, the Rasmussen-Buol House may still have been able to retain that corner house setting. The building height, which is 33 feet 7 inches top roof of peak, will overpower the historic house, which appears to be closer to 20 feet in height. These are top of peak measurements. The building is 2 full stories, while most of the homes in the neighborhood, including the landmark, is 1.5 stories. So it's not any individual one of these, it's all of these combined create a finding for denial. So the board has options this evening to approve the proposal with conditions, and you'd have to look back at the staff report, which proposed recommended conditions, though staff still is not sure that the board has ability to provide clear and objective criteria for those conditions, but if they can, the board could do that. Deny the proposal with findings found in the staff report, which is staff's recommendation this evening, and specifically in the motion, identify the findings for denial that were found in the previous slide. So you can just say, the slide 3, I believe, slide 3. So you can say in your motion, I approve to deny the application and cite the application number specifically with the findings for denial found in slide 3. And then what I can do is add those to the notice of decision along with all the findings found in the staff report. Or you can continue the hearing to a date certain and request design modifications and 120 deadline waiver based on a chosen meeting date. So staff recommends number 2 at this time. So I am going to end the slideshow and stop sharing. And the applicant was invited this evening and has not signed into the meeting yet. So there's no applicant comment this evening. So that's all I have at this time.
Okay, great. Well, we've read the information we need to read, so that's all done. It's up to the board now to have discussion. And do I have any comments from the board? If not, do I have a motion from the board?
I would make a motion for denial of GLUA 23-00001 and HR 23-00002 based on staff findings and also the findings of slide 3 and based on no further submittal from the applicant.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Paul. Okay.
That was Ray.
Oh, Ray. Thank you, Ray.
I'm sounding like Paul. I
didn't see your mouth moving. I wasn't sure. I was sure. Okay, so Christina, you want to call for the vote?
Sure. Board Member Egger.
I approve the, I concur with the, whatever, yes.
Okay, we'll take that.
Board Member Stobie.
Aye.
Board Member Green.
Aye.
Board Member Ferry.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Powell.
Aye.
The motion carries. The application is denied based on the findings.
Okay, thank you very much. We can now move on. It looks like we have the 2023-2025 Biennium work plan discussion.
Sure. So I wanted to, it looks like more boards and commissions, and I'm starting with the Natural Resource Committee, and I think others are looking to align their work plans with the biennium rather than a yearly work plan, because we have the city commission goals and budget, and it makes more sense to have our work plan align with the city commission's biennium budget and their goals. And so with and knowing we haven't adopted a work plan this year, it makes sense we might be a good candidate to continue that. So what I've done, and I will share my screen, is I've identified kind of items that I think make sense to be added to the work plan. And there is no June Historic Review Board meeting. So the next meeting the board will have will be in July. So really, this is just a general conversation, really almost like introducing the topic. And I'll share my screen in just a moment. And really, it's more to think about it this summer. And then we can have a more refined conversation in July. And then the board will be meeting for in-house training on August 11th with CAMP, which is an all-day historic preservation education day with the National Association of Historic Planning Commissions, Landmarks Commissions. And I think after that meeting, there may be things that you hadn't thought about, or it may further solidify your goals and work plans. So I think we're looking at adoption at the August meeting. And so really this tonight is just really to start the conversation. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go to here. Can everyone see the list of items?
Yes.
Okay, so as I identified, we have the National Association of Preservation Commissions. We have a day-long education session. This is being paid for by our certified local government grant. The tentative sessions will be Preservation 101, standards for guidelines for design review, and kind of understanding how to look at guidelines, kind of in general sense, but also they'll be looking at our own design guidelines. They'll be doing an envisioning infill, kind of active design, look at how to look at infill projects, alternative materials, which I know has been an interesting piece of conversation the board has had over the years, and kind of understand what's going on nationwide and how to look at alternative materials as they come into play in the years come, because there's always changes in technology. Then a specific topic that we requested, which is solar panels. And then finally, a design review exercise where everyone gets to be involved. So this is open to up to 30 people. So we'll be inviting historic review board members, neighborhood association members who want to be involved, city commission members who want to be involved, and we may reach out to other certified local government staff in our area if they want to attend as well. It most likely will be at our city commission chambers in the city hall, our old chambers. So more information on that. The next item, which Kelly Reed, who is the previous preservation planner, worked with you for a couple of years on, and because of staffing timing, we had to put on hold, but it's still there, is looking at our compatible change project, which was understanding the thresholds for triggering review. So what you saw tonight was a more than 30% addition, but maybe there might be additional triggers of height or other pieces in that. So the work plan look at starting that process back again, review what we've done to date and what we need to redo. We need to kind of open up and reach back out to the community and kind of what are the next steps for adopting revisions to our definition of new construction. There was something that was brought up by Kelly Reed, which was a potential work session to look at a standard draft condition of approval with more details for applicants who come in for new construction on providing them more direction on how to pick the correct window detail as they move forward to designing and getting the building permit. So are there additional kind of standard conditions we can provide for that? Quarterly, we work on our homeowner welcome education packet, so I could also be able to show you what we do today. Any change in ownership of the 500 or so designated historic resources gets sent a little homeowner welcome packet when the tax assessor provides us the quarterly update. So we probably mail out anywhere between 5 and 10 packets every quarter, depending on what sells. And then, of course, our Preservation Month and Ruth Powers Award, which we just finished up this May. So those are kind of the initial list. So I kind of open it up for a general conversation. If there's other things that you would want to see on there, or just thoughts about this next 2 years work plan.
Okay, any comments? I think it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, it certainly, it's going to help me a lot in all of these items. But I really like the idea of doing it in August, finishing it up and adopting then, because I think we'll get a lot of information from the camp. And I think I certainly will. I mean, I wish I had more knowledge than I do, as much as I've been reading, but still, I think it's, I think that's a great idea. I can't see anything off the top of my head right now. I'm new enough that I don't really know. So I don't know what I don't know.
I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm certainly looking forward to the camp and like Vice Chair Powell mentioned, I feel like that I've got a lot to learn, and I'd like to learn as much as I can, and on behalf of the public we're trying to serve. So I'm quite supportive of it.
Christina, I just had a question. Are we going to get a breakdown of times for the different sort of sections of the camp? I unfortunately will not be able to attend all of them, although I totally wish I could. But I'd like to try to attend as many as I can. Do you know if there's going to be like there's sort of a schedule?
There will be. I'm actually having a prep meeting with the camp folks in about a week or two, so I'll learn more. And yeah, I assume what will come out of it when we get ready to publish and reach out to folks is your traditional kind of day-long meeting schedule, where it'll show the breaks, the lunch, when is what. So I imagine there'll be definitely community folks and people in Oregon City staff who may visit some or all of the agenda items. So yeah, I'll definitely, once I get the information out, it very well may be not till July, but I can provide more information. But yeah, you'll expect to, when you get the formal invite, to have a standard agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other than that, I think it looks great.
So one question about the infill design. Do you think that'll be pretty comprehensive about, because I'm really interested in, what we can and can't do and what other people are doing, and maybe some examples of those. That's kind of what I'd like to see too. I mean, we're coming up to that more and more now as people are moving into Oregon City, and we're starting to see more good ideas. But I'd like to get see if there's somebody out there that has done some of these things, and if we can get some examples, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can pass that on. That's the one I know the least about, the envisioning infill. I think it's also how, as a board, how to make sure you're getting the plans and renderings you need to make a thoughtful decision too, and how to read those plans. It could be as little as that. So I'll find out more about that one. And the folks, from what I've, National Association of Preservation Commission is very volunteer based. So these are people who are in the private and public sector that volunteer to come out to Portland to do this. So we'll have people, I think, from Denver and Nashville, and there may be an Oregon one. And so really it's learning what we can and kind of a national understanding, and they are going to spend the next 2 months reading. I just sent them all the links we have to everything in our code, all of our design guidelines, everything, and really giving them, like, this is what we do now as a preservation program, and this is what our board is doing, and these are the issues that we're hitting up against. And, infill is probably one of the hardest ones. And so that is some of the comments I'll be saying to them when I do the prep meeting, but this actually is a good conversation. Is there something you are really like, oh, if we got a nugget of this concept, I'd be really excited. So I'm interested to hear from the board so I can pass on to the camp group when I meet with them over Zoom next week.
Well, my only thought is, and it's interesting you mentioned Denver, which is where I hail from, but I had an old very early 1900s home there in an old historic neighborhood of near downtown Denver called South Denver, and it was an amazing little community. And I went and recently looked at it online, and they're tearing these homes down and putting these modern homes. They're really a big block is what they are. And they're in between all these in the neighborhoods, and in between all the homes in the neighborhood. So, and they're selling them for $2 and $3 million. And I want to see not only what's good people have done, but also what's bad, so we can say, no, we don't want that. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, a better infill. It just sickened me to see that kind of thing in a historic neighborhood, and as it would here in Oregon City. I know what I wouldn't like, but I'd like to kind of see it from other historic areas, especially East Coast areas where there's so much history there and so many old buildings and what they're doing in those kind of environments. That's really my thought about infill at this point.
Any other comments from board members I can pass on to the camp group?
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for working so hard to get this for us. We asked you to do it, and you came through for us. We really appreciate that, all of us. I know. Thank you.
Yeah, I was crossing my fingers that we could do it within the end of the grant cycle, which is the end of the summer, and we did it. So big thanks to camp too, because they were able to fit us in.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving forward. It looks like the only thing we have left is meeting minutes.
Yeah, if you call the last round, there was some action missing, so those are back in. So this would be a motion just to approve the package of minutes, unless there's any comments.
Okay, do we have any comments? Okay, if no comments, a motion.
I move that we approve the package of minutes.
I'll second.
A motion and a second.
All
Christina,
right.
would you like to call roll?
Board Member Stobie.
Aye.
Board Member Edgar.
Aye.
Board Member Green.
Aye.
Board Member Ferry, excuse me.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Powell.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you very
carries.
much.
And
Okay.
I just have one last communication comment for this evening. The design guidelines for middle housing was passed last week by the City Commission with one small amendment by the mayor, which actually is great. It is, she requested that for townhomes, we indicate that in McLaughlin, Queen Anne is an appropriate style, and she wanted to reiterate that Queen Anne's would never be townhomes would never be a full Queen Anne style. They'd be more of a Queen Anne vernacular style, which is absolutely true. You can't build a full style Queen Anne townhome. That doesn't make sense. So the one word change was regarding townhomes. It was Queen Anne vernacular rather than just Queen Anne, which makes perfect sense. So those are now adopted and are attached to our website as an addendum to the design guidelines for new construction.
Great. Okay. Any other comments from the board or anyone else? All right, well, hearing none, I would say that we will adjourn this meeting at about 13 minutes to 9.
See you all in July. Remember, no
See you
meeting in June.
July.
Right.
Thank
All
you.
Right.
Bye,
Bye.
thank you.